All right, looks like we're live. What's up, everybody? Another great day. Another great day in Maximus. Another great day in Hexago, and just another great day on this beautiful earth. Had an awesome week. Did a lot of live stream. This is the most hours of live stream that I've ever done in a week in my life, and people seem to really enjoy it. And I feel like I've gotten a whole lot done. Just like all the stuff that I'm just doing anyways. It's actually feels really good to just include you all in this while I'm working through this stuff. Um, Honestly, I'll probably do this. I feel like I found something special in doing this, and who knows, maybe I'll be doing this for everything else that I ever create in the future. It's pretty awesome. Let's get this link out. Let's hit the links. Let me tweet this. So this will be a shorter stream because I have some other stuff to do. And I know that Richard's starting a stream in like 45 minutes. So I know a lot of people want to be watching that, but yeah, I'm just going to, let me tweet this. Yep. But yeah, pretty much all I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the Maximus Perpetual pool contract. I'm not going to go in like as much detail because it's basically all entirely the same thing as the original Maxi contract. And we've already done an extensive video on that. I'm mainly going to be focusing in on the things that we changed about it. Because basically for the only difference between these perpetual pools and the original Maxi is that the perpetual pools allow for repeat staking. Whereas Maxi was a one and done stake. And then also the perpetual pools, share some of their bonus earnings with the Maximus team contract. So I'm going to show you how the team Maximus the team is linked to the perpetual pool. And we're going to show you how that bonus sharing works. And by bonus, I mean half of the bigger pays better bonus of the hex. And then the Hedron that Hedron that's thrown in there as well. And so we're going to do a pretty quick stream today. So let's just hop right into it. Anyone in the comments, I'll just come back and at the end, I'll answer any questions. So let's do it. Let's get this done. So again, standard Open Zeppelin boilerplate ERC20 libraries. We're not trying to innovate on anything related to like the ERC20. So all that stuff is just normal. These are the interfaces for using the hex token and the Hedron token. Let me zoom in. This will help. Let's hope you all can see my screen. Yep. Okay. So there are a couple different variables in here. So mint duration. So here, mint duration is how long the minting phase is. So and then minting phase start is what hex day the minting phase started at. Minting phase end is the hex day that the minting phase ends at. As each stake cycles through, those get updated. So that's always like when does the current minting phase start and when does the current minting phase end. And then those are reset as the stakes end. So we'll see that in a little bit. Stake start day is the day that the current hex stake has started. Stake end day is the day that the current hex stake has ended. And the stake length is the length of stake, obviously. The hex redemption rate is the number of hex units redeemable per perpetual pool token. But it's not just redeemable and mintable. It's redeemable per perpetual pool token, and the number of the number of hex required to mint a new perpetual pool token after a stake ends. So it's pretty important about these pools is that when the stake ends, you can then either redeem that number of hex per perpetual pool token, or if you want to add to the stake, you can now mint at that new rate. So that redemption rate, it's called the hex redemption rate. That's the rate at which you can either join or leave the pool. Has stake started, has stake ended, obviously, has Hedron minted. It's just to keep track of Hedron minting on the stake. Stake is active, so that'll be true or false based on whether or not a stake is currently ongoing. The end staker, that's again, that's a way to log who ended each stake, so that maybe a kind volunteer may want to send them some ETH, or maybe people will build a contract that enables for recompensating the end staker. So that's just there for anyone's use. The team contract address, that's going to be the address of the team contract. Current stake principal. So this is used in calculating the bonus sharing, and it's just the like for each stake, it just keeps track of how many hex were staked in any given stake. And then current period, that's a number that goes. So that's the even numbers are reload periods. So reload periods are when you can mint or redeem. Odd numbers are staking periods. So and that is used by the team contract. So these bottom three variables, those are new to the pools, and those are related to the team contract integration. So here on the constructor, so the team contract, like we showed earlier, the team contract actually deploys these perpetual pools. So when we go back to the perpetual or the team contract, this function here, deploy pool, this is how the base trio, Lucky, and Deci are created. And so when you deploy the pool, you pass it a name, a ticker, stake length, an initial mint length, and a reload length. So the initial mint duration, that's for the first time, and then the reload duration is the time in between each further stake. So because we actually have been thinking about different scheduling of these, so where they're not, where some, maybe we want to allow for the pools to have a longer initial mint duration than like the time in between. So those are still, you'll see that, but that's the information that you use to deploy these pools, and then that's what schedules the initial minting phase, when the stake starts, and then what those ongoing reload periods look like in between there. So in the constructors, we see that the mint duration is set to be that reload duration, and that's because that's the value that each ongoing one is going to use, and then gets the current day. Then it says the minting phase start is today, and then minting phase end is the start day plus the initial mint duration. So like this first minting phase start and minting phase end is based on that initial mint duration, and then as you'll see later, this mint duration value that we set with the reload duration, that's for the rescheduling after the first stake. But for the first stake, start day is on today, end day is based on that initial mint duration. Then we have the stake length. Then we just set these variables. Has stake started, has stake ended, has Hedron minted, stake is active, and then there we save the team contract address, and then we set the initial minting and redemption rate at 1-to-1, and it has 8 decimals because hex and all these coins have 8 decimals. So it's really that's what one hex actually means, 1 times 10 to the 8 units from the contract perspective. So and then current stake principal 0, that'll get set later. Current period is 0 because it's the initial period. So again, 8 decimals. There's eight units after the decimal for these tokens. The pool address is the existing address, and then hex address and the Hedron address, we all know those. Again, these are the interfaces for using the hex token and the hex and the Hedron token contracts. Then these functions here, these are the same. Those just pull information, from here. So that's just like for user interfaces or just people. If you want to read the information from the contract, you can look at those. And then these are just retrieving information about, the current period, the day, the Hedron day, who the recent end staker was. And then this is just like the minting function used only by the contract. So in any contract, when you see the word private, that means that only the contract itself can run it. So that means that only functions written in this contract can run this mint function. So that's how you know that the only way that these pool tokens are minted is per the rules of the contract. So when you search the word mint in here, you see how it only shows up twice. Once where this function is defined, and then once where it's used. So, and it's only used in this pledge hex function only after you've successfully done all these other steps. So that's how you know that there can't be just like extra tokens minted, is because you can look to see where that function is used. And even the other, because this underscore mint function, that's the one that's in the built-in Open Zeppelin libraries. So even that isn't used anywhere. That's only used in this like wrapper function. And so that's how you know that there's not going to be any extra tokens minted. And so that is, pretty simple for you as a user, just to confirm for yourself. And so I like to emphasize that. So the only thing different about this pledge hex function from the pledge hex function in the Maximus contract, in the original one, is that that the new one is based on it's all based on whether or not the stake is active. So it used to be like in between stake end date and stake start date. Now there's this value stake is active. That's really used so that the contract knows what's going on, so that it knows what functions are eligible to use. Because this require thing. So so in order to run this function, the stake is active must be false. That means that the stake may not be active, which makes sense because you can't add to the stake while the stake is already going. You can only add to the stake during during the initial mint phase or those reload periods. And so during the initial mint phase and then during the reload periods, stake is active is equal to false. And so that's what allows this function to run, is only when the stake is not active. So when stake is active equals false, it runs this one. Then it checks to make sure that that we're in the greater than the minting phase start and less than the minting phase end. So there's kind of two checks here that it's an eligible time for people to mint these coins by adding hex to the contract. And then it also checks to make sure that you have given the pool contract the allowance to interact with this amount of your coins. So when we were doing the so let's look at this. I'll just show you right here. So you know how when you're minting on testnet, it prompts you to approve it. That's just the contract also confirming that you have given the proper allowances for it to be run. And then all it does is it sends your hex from you to the pool address in whatever amount you designated when you ran that function. And then it takes that mintable amount, which is, it's all based on that hex redemption rate. So that redemption rate that we defined here, this is the initial one. So it's like 1 to 1. And so, so if you were to put in 100, it would say 100 times, or 100 times the scaling value divided by that hex redemption rate. And so the amount that you are eligible to mint, at the start, it's 1 to just 1 to 1, but over time that hex redemption rate grows. And so in each reload period, the number of pool tokens that you can mint goes down, and it makes sense, right? Because now that the pool starts out all 1-to-1, but then after the first time, say on base it earns 10%. It now that there's if you started out with 100 million hex in that pool, then you go forward, in that next period, you now have 110. So it makes sense that you can't just come in and mint at that new 1-to-1 rate, because everyone who minted at that 1-to-1 rate now has, 1.1 hex per token. And so in order for it to be a fair reload, it just adjusts with that. So that's the big difference here, across the new pool contract versus the Maximus contract, is that this redemption rate is used for both minting and redemption. And so that's the mintable amount. And then it just mints you that mintable amount. So again, the minting of your pool tokens is very simple. All it does is it sends your hex from you to the contract, and then also mints your hex based on the redemption rate. So that's all there is to it. And then redeeming hex, it's like the same thing. So when it checks to make sure that the stake is not active, because you can only do this when it's when it's not being staked. Then it checks how much maxi that you have. So, or how much pool to. I should update these variable names, huh? I definitely should. Okay, let's see it right now. Because I just use the maxi contract. And just to make this easier for the auditor is going over the team contract, so I can actually update these values now before they get to this one. It's not amount maxi, it's actually an amount. Here, we're just going to give this an amount, right? Yeah, so we'll just get rid of the name maxi in there. Make sure that amount maxi is not there. Raw do amount, and then burning amount. Okay. Let's see if we can. Okay, amount. It's the number of pool tokens. Okay, so got that fixed. So your pool token. So we're just going to call that your balance. Your balance. So it gets your balance of the pool token, and then it checks to make sure that the amount that you have is greater than or equal to the amount you're trying to redeem. Then it calculates your raw redeemable amount. And so that is, so the amount of pool tokens times the redemption rate. So during the initial minting phase, it's 1-to-1. So that means that you can, you remember how you can like add to it, but then if you get cold feet, you can redeem before it starts. But on each ongoing one, as that redemption rate grows, then the redeemable amount grows. And so that's how we get how many tokens you can, or how many hex you can redeem. And then, so you see the raw redeemable amount is the amount times the redemption rate. And then remember that whole division thing where we have to scale back down by that 10 to the 8 value to get the number of units. So that's the redeemable amount. So then it burns the amount of pool tokens that you entered, and then it transfers to you, your message.sender, it transfers to you that redeemable amount. So again, it's all very similar to how the Maximus one worked. The only difference here was that the stake is active is false. That's like a new thing. So now let's get to the staking part. So this is how we let's see, let's just remove that old comment. That was what I removed. It used to be where has stake started and has stake ended were the things that governed when it could start. But now it's like based on the stake is active or stake is not active. We don't need that anymore. So stake is active is false, meaning that, the stake hasn't started yet. And then it gets the current day. Then when the current day is greater than the minting phase end day, that's required in order to run this. So that, that, which makes sense, right? The minting, each additional minting phase needs to have ended in order, like because how the minting phases are scheduled. That's what tells you when you can run the stake hex. So that's how we know. And then it gets the total amount of hex. So the hex balance of the pool address, and then it stakes that amount via the stake hex function. Which calls this, calls the hex token contract, runs stake start in the amount, and then the stake length. Has stake ended. So now it sets that has stake ended value. Stake start day is the current day, stake end day, current day plus stake length. Stake is active equals true. So that whole stake is active thing. So once you run this, you can't just like run it again, because stake is active has to be false. And after you run this function, when you run that function, it sets stake is active to be true. And then it increments that current period. So that's what I was saying earlier about that current period being, odd, even numbers when it's like a minting phase, and odd numbers when it's a stake phase. And that just like keeps track of like how many different stakes have gone through. And then this current period value is actually used as the calendar by the team contract. So that's pretty important there. But yeah, so it just basically sets the stake and then schedules it to be ended. And yeah, so the other, so then these are like the supporting functions. These are just basically the wrapper functions. Like this one calls stake start, and then this one calls stake end. And these are used, that stake hex is used there, and stake hex is used in this function. And so this is the function that you run after the stake ends. So the first thing is it checks to make sure that the current day is greater than the stake end day. So it's, make sure that the stake is over. And then it checks to make sure that there's currently an active stake, meaning that the stake hasn't been ended yet. So make sure that there's that. And then it ends the stake by running that function right above here, by passing it in the stake index and the stake ID into the hex contract. And then it sets the value has stake ended equals true. And then it updates the hex balance, or it measures the hex balance, which, hex contract.balance of the pool address. And then it calculates the bigger pays better bonus sharing amount, which is right here. So let's walk through that. We did yesterday on the video where we talked about like the team earnings. This is exactly what we were going over. Get bonus sharing amount. It takes in the principal and the end value and the stake length. And so what we're trying to calculate here first is the bigger pays better effective hex. That's like, when you go on to hex.com and you see your bigger pays better and longer pays better bonuses, you'll see how it's measured in effective hex. That's how we know what percent of the total yield was based on the bigger pays better bonus sharing. And so then what we have is we have the bigger pays better threshold, 150 million. And then, so if the principal is greater than the bigger pays better threshold, then we know that the bigger pays better effective hex is just 10% of the principal. You get that 10% bonus. But if it's smaller than that, which we hope never happens, you get that, it's between 0 and 10% bonus, and that's multiplied by your principal. So principal times the scaled BPB multiplier divided by the unscalar. So that's basically how we get that. And then now we have we measure the longer pays better effective hex. Longer pays better threshold is 3650. If the stake length is greater than the threshold, we know that the multiplier is 2. But then we know that if it's not, then it's, scales up to 2 based on the length. And then we have the longer pays better effective hex is the principal times the longer pays better multiplier, then scaled down. And then we have the scalar, so that's the same scaling value we use. And then here we have, so we get the earnings, which is the end value minus the principal. And then the bigger pays better makeup scaled value is the effective hex, the bigger pays better effective hex divided by the total, number of hex that we're able to get T shares from that stake. So we have the bigger pays better effective, the principal plus the longer pays better effective hex. And then we take those earnings and multiply them by that bigger pays better makeup scaled value. And then we divide by that end scalar. And then we split that in half. And so that's how we get the bigger pays better earnings from that stake. And then we split them in half because that's how much the team contract gets. It only gets half of that. Should get all of it, but it only gets half of it. And then that's the value that is calculated as the bigger pays better bonus sharing amount. And then that is what gets transferred. So hex token dot transfer. So we transfer to the team contract address the bigger pays better bonus sharing amount. And so that's what we're going to be testing. The minting on our testnet tokens, those end in like 4 hours from now. And so in 4 hours, we're going to start these stakes, and then base is going to be 1 day, and then trio is going to be 3 days. So over the next couple of days, we're going to be confirming on our testnet test that this actually works as intended. From my initial testing, it works, but we're actually, we're doing a big sanity check here so everyone can see for themselves that it all works. And so that's what we'll be doing there. And then, so that's how the hex, bonus sharing is sent to the team contract. But then also, the Hedron is sent to the team contract address as well. So we've talked about this before, why we chose to just send all of the Hedron from the stake to the team contract. One is just to enhance the simplicity of this contract, because since it's hex in, but then so imagine that we were trying, like with Maxi, for instance, it's hex in, but then hex and Hedron out. And so having it be 1 token in and then 2 tokens out, that disrupts the ongoing minting ratio. And so in order to not have to build something in that tracks like what addresses actually held the tokens so that only those addresses could claim the Hedron, we just decided to just bundle up the Hedron and just pass it on to team. People find that fair because, one, it's actually a tiny amount. By now, like the Hedron that you earn for a stake is very small. If the price goes up, that's great. But the Hedron you earn is actually, it's a very small portion of the total value of the stake. And especially for base and trio. For Deci, it is larger because it's over a longer period, but still it is a pretty small, small part. And it's, the Hedron didn't have to exist in the first place anyways. Like that's just like a nice bonus. We all went on for years staking hex without Hedron, and it was fine. So that Hedron, it's not like like the main value in the pools is the hex. The Hedron is just a nice little bonus, but then the bonus gets paid to the team contract. And so if you really want that Hedron that you feel like you're missing through that, one, either just buy that Hedron, so just carve off like, a portion of your gains, or maybe sell into a premium to, just buy some Hedron, or just take other money and buy Hedron, do that, or just stake in the team contract, because the team contract is the one that's earning this Hedron. And so if you're holding one of these perpetual pools, you can simply stake in the team contract, and then you're earning that Hedron from these pools. So and you're earning it from all the pools, not just the one that you're in. So you may actually end up getting more Hedron by by also staking team, and that's really the whole purpose of the design. Is that like if you're staked in these perpetual pools, we want you to be incentivized to to stake, also stake team. And if you're staked in team, that means that you're incentivized to try to grow these pools. So it's almost like there's like a dual incentive where people that are in the pools are incentivized to join team, and the people that are in team are incentivized to grow the pools. And so it's kind of like this nice feedback loop of growth on both ends, where where you're really like the people that'll perform the best are going to be the people that hold both of these. And so just sending all of the Hedron to in the team or in the contract after the stake, just sending all that to team actually is like creates a really good incentive. So that's why that's done. And so then the next thing it does is it calculates these redemption rates, or it's the redemption rate. So it takes the total maxi supply. So that all of, or so total, let's just call this total supply. So total maxi supply. So let's just call that one total supply. Okay. So total supply is the pool token address. So this is IRC20, and then the pool token address. That's just like the ERC20 interface. So then we get the total supply from that number. And then we calculate the redemption rate by passing it the hex balance and the total supply. That basically just divides the hex balance by this total supply. And then it sets the end staker to whomever ran this function. And then it resets the stake print, because now the stake is ended, and so there's no principal. So it just resets the stake principal, and then that gets reset, on the next go around. Then it sets stake is active to be false, because the stake is just ended. So now all the functions that require stake is active to be false can be run. So that's pledge and redeem, and then it resets the minting phase start. So it reschedules the minting phase. So now we have, the next, so now a new minting phase starts on today, hex.token.current day. And then the new minting phase end date is scheduled to be the minting phase start day. So today plus the mint duration. And as we showed earlier, mint duration is set to be the reload duration. So you see how that worked on the first time that these minting phase start and minting phase end, it was start day plus initial mint duration. So that's like one of these values that we pass in when we deploy it. On the next go around, it's the reload duration. So that's the reload period. And so that's how each additional stake is scheduled, or each additional minting phase is scheduled. And then it increments the current period. So that current period, you see, it increments when a stake starts, and it increments when a stake ends. And so it's always, and that's how or not you, but that's how other contracts like the team contract know, what the status of that stake is. So this is that bonus sharing thing we talked about. This is that calculate redemption rate. So literally the balance divided by the supply. And then these are just the mint Hedron functions. So the Hedron still gets, so anyone can choose to run these. Doesn't need to be you, but these get run as the stake goes on. And then that's what generates the Hedron that is then shared to team. So yeah, that is it. This contract, this is the tried and true Maxi contract, but just modified to enable restaking and rolling forward. So that's what we're testing now. So let's just do so here, and this is like this is what it looks like on the testnet. So what you do here So here we're gonna mint one base. Actually, no, my favorite one is actually lucky. So here I'm gonna mint. We're gonna switch to the lucky pool, and we are going to mint one hex into one lucky. So first you have to approve. So I'm approving on MetaMask. Okay, just went through. Now we're minting. Okay, so there we go. We just minted some lucky. And yeah, so the minting of these pools is eligible until about 4 hours from now when the day takes over. So let's come in here and let's see if anyone had any questions. Hexhodl says, hey, Hexo's live in RH 8888. Oi, oi. What's up? Yeah, so that's the staking contract for the perpetual pools. I'm gonna go ahead and hop off now. Glad we could go over that, and thank y'all for joining us. We'll talk to y'all soon. Oh my God, I'm still live. That's funny. See you guys later.